My dearest brothers and sisters. This is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. I know that times on your planet are incredibly tough. And yet, I also understand that I only know this somewhat intellectually. That isn't nearly the same as living through it. Because of this, we have read and shared and studied and discussed the comments you have posted under our last two messages, namely Hakann, debunking the liberation process has to be this way in Arkok, is humanity going to free itself? Thank you very much for your thoughts. It helps us to understand living on Earth a bit better. It has also helped us to reshape our policy to better reflect the will of the people on Earth, as we'll discuss later in this message, because after all it's your society and your lives that we're talking about here. To get some idea of what life on Earth may be like, we have also been listening to people who have lived on dark worlds, such as Arkok. Some of you are also present on our ships during your sleep state, and we have asked you what life on Earth is like and what you think we should do. Some people have pointed out in the comment section that us galactics may be emotionally scarred from over-intervening during Atlantis, and on other worlds. Good point. I think there may be some truth to this. We had noted this previously, but I have again drawn attention to this and recommended that everyone in decision-making positions visit a healer to check if they still have some emotional disbalance here. We remember our past lives and thus our past over-interventions well, which also means that past life trauma is quite sticky with us. There is some societal healing and societal unburdening that we are working through. Still, I don't think that our reluctance to intervene is all just emotional trauma on our side. I think that may be a small part of it, but I don't think that's the largest part of it. To you it might seem obvious that us intervening today is the best solution. However, waiting say a year means that there is some reasonable probability of humanity freeing itself. The Grey Hats are doing certain things behind the scenes and the consciousness of humanity is rising. So it's not impossible that humanity frees itself without action by the Grey Hats. An intervention by us could be needless, if it turns out humanity frees itself without us. And in an unlikely but also not impossible scenario, a needless intervention by us could cause instability and suffering for say 100 years. A year of suffering now to potentially prevent 100 years of suffering might be worth it. I get that you may disagree, but keep in mind that you are deeply experiencing the current pain, while the potential suffering caused by an over-intervention is very abstract to you. Someone in severe pain obviously cares more about their current pain than about potential future pain. However, we also feel a responsibility towards future generations, who might be the ones to pay the price if we over-intervene now. Fundamentally, we have an intervention dilemma, and it basically is this. How do you weigh up the current suffering of billions of people, versus the potential suffering that could be caused by us possibly over-intervening and possibly producing instability? There is some probability that humanity will free itself anyway, and thus our intervention may just produce potential instability for nothing. So on one hand we have current suffering. On the other hand there's a relatively long period of potential suffering that could occur from us over-intervening. Which is worse? And at which point do we intervene to end the current suffering? Well, this can't be answered by just solving a mathematical equation. In my mind, there is no single objectively correct answer here. To us, there are some answers that are just bad solutions to this dilemma, and there are some answers that are least bad solutions to this dilemma. We say least bad solution instead of relatively best solution because we acknowledge that all solutions are bad in a way, they involve present-day suffering, or they involve a risk of future suffering. There is no single solution that is just outright good and happy, from our perspective. But there are solutions that we consider bad, and there are solutions that we consider to be least bad, the relatively best solutions. What are examples of bad solutions to this dilemma? For example, unless something unforeseen happens, us intervening in 2023 is from our point of view a bad answer, because it sacrifices too much opportunity for the Grey Hats to finally get their act together after all. We have recently communicated our new Get Moving or We May Arrest You 2 stance to them, including via background channels. This creates a new situation that has not yet unfolded. Plus the Grey Hats have certain plans on the rails and they are currently already taking some action. So it's possible that the Grey Hats will make a big move soon. I know that a lot of people on Earth will disagree with me and want a 2023 intervention, but frankly, you don't have the information necessary to properly weigh up the pros and cons. Even most galactics deeply in the intervene soon camp are agreeing that giving the Grey Hats a few months, after having warned them, is a good decision. Many of you agree, when you visit us during sleep time and clearly perceive the possible timelines. Gaia also agrees to give the Grey Hats a few more months. Because that really does mitigate a lot of future risk, and it would be really good for Earth humans if you do manage to free yourselves after all. Grey Hats, you have the rest of 2023 to do public mass arrests and to substantially begin the process of disclosure. With disclosure, we don't just mean releasing some documents, or someone making a speech somewhere, and then only the already awake see it because the mainstream media doesn't report it. That type of disclosure is mostly preaching to the choir. We mean a type of disclosure that the sleepers will see, whether that's an E/EBS message, or a mainstream media takeover. And we mean that the amount of disclosure is substantial, because after all, many people including children are suffering every day. Therefore an overly slow rollout of disclosure, such as mainstream media showing one thing that contradicts the narrative but then continuing to push disinformation, is not enough at this stage. It is fine to start with the easier to digest pieces of disclosure first, such as regular corruption. But the people should finally see that justice is once again restored. If it's shown that someone is corrupt, then they should also be arrested. And if the court ruling over that case is obviously corrupt itself, then drag both the original corrupt person as well as possibly the corrupt court in front of a military tribunal. If you object to this, keep in mind that your beloved ancestors who freed America from British rule also broke the law, or if you live in another country, almost certainly there is someone who you think did some great deed but their action nonetheless broke the law. The US Declaration of Independence was clearly illegal under the law at that time. You may want to argue that it was justified because it was obviously the morally right thing to do, and I agree, and similarly, freeing yourself from the dark controllers today is obviously the morally right thing to do. Any argument you may want to give for why the illegal Declaration of Independence was justified, you can use those same arguments to justify illegal actions today if they are necessary to free yourselves from the dark controllers. If certain laws make it illegal to free yourselves, then it's those laws and not your freedom that should be discarded. If your ancestors took the approach that you're currently taking, then America would still be a British colony today. From our point of view, some of your minds have actually been infected with the idea that it's better to let millions of people suffer than it is to break some laws. Again, your founding fathers broke the law, and you revere them, and you have at least as much need to free yourselves as the founding fathers did. I know that arguments are made saying if we break the law, then we end up in chaos, but look at where you already are. How has working within the confines of the law been working out for you? Frankly, from our point of view it's not the breaking of certain laws, but the suffering of millions that should alarm people and cause immediate concern. From our point of view it's obvious that the suffering of millions should weigh more heavily than certain laws. After all, laws aren't living things. People are. So the well-being of people should be more important than the well-being of laws. Sure, laws can help to create well-being for the people, but if laws stop you from freeing the people, then it's obvious that your living and breathing brothers and sisters are more important than ink on a page. Practically speaking, laws function mostly as a control, defense mechanism of the dark controllers. And the dark controllers themselves certainly aren't letting laws stop them from doing what they want to do. And if you want to make an argument saying if we break the law, we're no better than they are, do you think that your founding fathers were no better than British rule? Because your founding fathers broke the law. Probably you don't think your founding fathers were as bad as British rule was. Okay, so then we've established that someone can break the law yet still be morally in the right. There are also plenty of other people who you probably think of as virtuous, yet who nonetheless broke the law. So clearly those who break the law aren't automatically as bad as the dark controllers are. Still, if you can do public mass arrests in 2023 without breaking the law, and actually bring those people to justice and not just have corrupt courts free them or endlessly stall or use procedural tricks, then fine with us. Alternatively, you can use galactic law. Under galactic law, you can bring people to justice, using military tribunals if necessary, if they can be proven to be working to harm the innocent. Feel free to request more information about galactic law if you're interested, because it gives you a full legal basis for public mass arrests. And again, if you need any other kind of support, we're more than happy to provide it. Once it's 2024, if there haven't been public mass arrests and substantial disclosure, we may intervene at any time. And if you haven't taken these actions by then, we may decide to hold you Grey Hats accountable under galactic law, in a galactic court. Alright, I'll go back to addressing lightworkers. As we argued, us galactics wish to give the Grey Hats some more time. Hence us intervening in 2023 is what we consider to be a bad solution. Another example of a bad solution to the dilemma would be us planning to only intervene in say mid-2027. That would clearly be us waiting too long. Then what are answers that, from our point of view, are least bad, or relatively best, solutions to this intervention dilemma? One least bad solution was our previous policy, which was a set of conditions under which we intervene. The exact conditions are hard to explain, because they involve probabilities and energies that you can't easily measure yourself and that you don't even really have proper words for. Effectively, this policy meant that if there's no Grey Hat move and no solar flash, then it's very likely, but not guaranteed, that we'll intervene before the end of 2026. Another least bad solution is the new policy we have just adopted, based in part on your comments. This new policy is a tightened set of conditions under which we intervene, which effectively boils down to, we will likely intervene in 2024 or 2025. So likely you will not have to wait until 2026 anymore, although we can't fully guarantee an intervention by 2024 or 2025, or even by 2026. In other words, based in part on your input, the likely intervention window is no longer 2024 to 2026. Now it's 2024 or 2025. Though if there is a big Grey Hat move, even just one that significantly improves your living situation without liberating you fully, then we will again assess the new situation, and we will again evaluate what our intervention policy should be. So we'll likely intervene in 2024 or 2025, but when exactly will we intervene? It depends on the free will choices that people on Earth make. The exact moment of intervention is mostly event-driven and energy-driven, and not time-driven. Why have we made this decision? Well, among other things, we have taken your input and Gaia's input and the wishes of the collective subconscious of Earth humans on board, because after all you are the ones having to live through this time on Earth. You know much better what life on Earth is like than we do. And you are clearly very much in favor of an intervention as soon as possible. Hence, among the least bad options, we have chosen the option that corresponds to the quickest possible intervention. Which effectively means that we are likely to intervene in 2024 or 2025. We are not willing to choose an option that in our view is just a bad solution to the intervention dilemma, such as intervening in 2023. But among the options that we consider least bad, we have chosen the option that corresponds to the quickest possible intervention. We also understand that within this 2024 to 2025 window, most of you strongly prefer the intervention to be sooner rather than later. Next up, I would like to address some suggestions and comments that commenters have made. If we physically meet you while Earth is still a war zone, then it's likely that after we leave, you will be immediately kidnapped by bad guys. Then you will have your brain scraped for information. The dark controllers have lots of surveillance and we simply can't guarantee your safety. Sure, we could meet you and then take you with us, but then there's one less beacon of light physically present on the world. Then the world becomes even darker and harsher for the people remaining. We are looking into ways in which we can help you or give you encouragement in less dramatic ways than us outright taking over the corporate media, or something like that. Thank you for the suggestions. We had already asked Source what specifically we should do, and Source has instructed us to make our own decision. So long as humanity is freed in the near future, 2026 still qualifies as near future in the context of this request from Source. Source tends to want creation to make their own choices, as is the case now. If we intervene, then that wouldn't be us going against Source's wishes. Yes, there is a divine plan, and it is simply that Earth will be free, and if we intervene and help free Earth, then that's how the divine plan unfolds. The divine plan isn't at this date there will be a solar flash. The divine plan is just that Earth will be free, and us intervening wouldn't be us messing up the divine plan. If we intervene, then that is the fulfillment of the divine plan. If there's a solar flash, then that is the fulfillment of the divine plan. If the Grey Hats get their act together and humanity is freed that way, then that is the fulfillment of the divine plan. In fact, there might not be a solar flash at all, because perhaps you can be liberated without it. After all, the solar flash would kill a lot of people. You can't just take a person deeply rooted in 3D and send him such a strong energetic pulse that he is shot right into 5D, and expect him to be fine after instantly jumping 2 dimensions. Now, Yes, a more gradual transition is possible, but you light workers and us galactics have been working to raise the collective consciousness for years now, and that has helped to an extent, but many 3D sleepers remain firmly rooted in 3D. We have already been working to pave the way for the solar flash for years, and have made some progress, but as you know, a lot of people still remain deeply asleep. And those deep sleepers might not do very well when a solar flash shoves them into 5D. So a solar flash can happen, but it would kill lots of people and isn't the purely upside scenario that some people think it is. Alternatively, Source could split the timelines, which means that the sleepers and the awake are physically separated forever. The sleepers have to experience a dark 3D world full of suffering until they find their way back to the light. And this world would be dark indeed because there would be no light workers spreading their light and sharing their energy with the sleepers. Meanwhile, the light workers get to experience a very nice, love-based 5D world. The downside here is obviously that this would cause a lot of suffering for the current sleepers. The separation consciousness perspective here is good, screw them, they should have woken up. The unity consciousness perspective here is that these sleepers are you. Thus if they suffer, you suffer, if you take others as part of yourself. Why hasn't Source either split the timelines or triggered the solar flash already? Well, Source may still do that in the future. However, so far Source hasn't done that because the whole point is that there has been enough death and suffering already. And frankly, us galactics haven't given up on the current sleepers. If we intervene and then spend some face-to-face quality time with the sleepers, then we will be able to wake a whole lot of them up. If loving and super advanced humans from another world, with wondrous technology and psychic abilities, tell them that something is true, then I'm sure that even the current sleepers will be inclined to consider that. Moreover, we can help to relieve people's suffering and thus get them out of their current emotional survival mode, which should make them more open-minded as well. If we intervene, then there may not need to be a solar flash or splitting of timelines. I get that many of you are looking forward to the solar flash, but if we can help free you and help uplift humanity and help wake the vast majority of people up, then you already have the things that you were hoping to get through the solar flash, right? Ultimately, many of you came here not because Earth is such a fun time, but because you wanted to help as many of the lost people on Earth as possible. Well, so do we, and this is that time. Some of you think that the future can be predicted with 100% accuracy. For example, we will have a solar flash or people will be freed during this year, but that's not how it works. If that was possible, then effectively you would have no free will. And if the situation is chaotic and unpredictable, as indeed it is on Earth, then it only makes sense to have different plans on the shelf, so that you can use the one that's most appropriate when the time comes. It happens somewhat frequently that Earth humans have a genuine vision, dream or precognition that some specific thing is going to happen, possibly at some specific date. But then the Earth human doesn't realize that they only foresaw a strong possibility, not a certainty. They only foresaw a possible future, not a guaranteed future. The only thing that's really certain is that you will be free in the near future, because Source has decreed it, and if necessary Source itself can just cause that to happen. So that will happen. But beyond that, there are many scenarios open. Will there be a cataclysm that forces us to evacuate Earth? Maybe. Will there be a solar flash? Maybe. Will there be a splitting of realities? Maybe. Will the Grey Hats get their act together? Maybe. If there is a solar flash, then when will that happen? We don't know. Next up, someone asked, why haven't the Grey Hats just accepted your offer of support and done the public mass arrests? Good question. Now it is possible that they will accept this in the future. Still, it is frankly a bit frustrating to me that our offer hasn't been accepted yet, because in my view this would be the obvious solution. Now, not every Grey Hat has the same perspective. For example, Trump has a different perspective than a mostly good-hearted American general. And a non-American Grey Hat has yet another perspective. But in general, what we're often told is one of the following. We have the situation in hand, we don't need your help. We just need a bit more time for people to wake up, certain things to happen, and then we'll pull the trigger. The waking up process, and doing this legally, just takes some amount of time. Also, our AI has told us that our plan is going to work. It isn't real AI, it's more like an advanced chat GPT, and it isn't as accurate as the Grey Hats think. We are going to resolve the situation before the point when you say you will intervene, so there is no problem. I'm a military person, It's not up to me to unilaterally decide to arrest certain politicians. If I did, that would be a military coup. Giving the green light for these mass arrests is up to the president, prime minister, courts, elected representatives of the people. I'm not going to go rogue and act unilaterally. I am going to follow the chain of command, the civilian leadership. What we think is really going on is some combination of the gray hats not wanting to give up their position of privilege, control, having vastly more knowledge and wealth and medical technology than the average person. The gray hats being too stubborn and prideful to admit that their let people suffer to wake them up plan isn't working, because the more that people suffer, the more they enter a psychological survival mode and the more close-minded they become. Admitting this mistake would mean facing the reality that their plan to let the people suffer wasn't the right one, which would be a psychologically tough thing to accept. The gray hats thinking that their country is amazing and should be able to fix their problems without outside help from us galactics. The gray hats not fully believing that we're at some point actually going to intervene and hold them to account, despite what we tell them. The gray hats having committed past crimes, or at the very least having allowed the black hats to kill people through inaction and through a failure to uphold their oath and responsibilities. The gray hats realize that if all is revealed and all the criminals are arrested, then other Earth humans may hold them accountable too. Some of the higher up gray hats are a bit narcissistic, and they wish to be remembered as the person or one of the few people who freed humanity, and thereby get all that love and adoration, and also forgiveness for their own past crimes and inaction. Whereas even if we just support Earth's liberation a bit, then obviously the headlines are going to focus on the Galactic Confederation helping Earth, and not focus on how amazing this particular gray hat is and that it was him who freed Earth. Now, personally we don't care about the credit and we're fine with not being credited at all. However, at least a few soldiers or cops are going to realize that they're getting active extraterrestrial help with the mass arrests, and of course when all the bad guys are arrested those people are going to talk about their extraterrestrial help. And then the headlines are going to talk about how the Galactic Confederation helped to free Earth, and not talk as much about how amazing this particular gray hat is and how he single-handedly freed everyone. So yes, it's unfortunate. We're hoping that our recent warning to them is a sufficient wake-up call. It's possible that it will be. Some gray hats also fear that we'll hijack their mass arrest action and that we'll somehow seize control of Earth for ourselves, or that we'll demand concessions from them afterwards for the help we offered. We get that this is how it often works on Earth, but we don't play that game. Frankly, if our secret agenda was to rule you or steal your resources, then we could and would have seized control of Earth many years ago. If we were secretly evil, then we wouldn't have spent all this time observing, waiting, supporting you, doing background operations to help you and sending high vibration energy to stabilize Earth. We help simply because it's the right thing to do, because you are our brothers and sisters, and in your specific case because Source asked us to. Admittedly, helping you might help us strategically as well, because once you've caught up spiritually and technologically then it is likely that you'll be both good-hearted as well as powerful. And then you could become a valued member of the Galactic Confederation, who we can work together with in the future as equals. Becoming members of the Galactic Confederation will be beneficial for you as well. But if you don't wish to be members of the Galactic Confederation, that's completely fine. We're not going to force you to do anything. We're not going to demand payment or demand political concessions. In general, this is how the Galactic Confederation has become large and powerful. It turns out that if beings are free from pain and coercion and fear, they tend to be good-hearted. So if we just help people freely, for no payment whatsoever, then often in the future they will choose to become members of the Galactic Confederation. But we don't force them to become good-hearted, or to become members of the Galactic Confederation. We just help them. Some people we've helped haven't become members of the Galactic Confederation, and that's fine. We haven't demanded any payment or political concessions from them. Our society is post-scarcity and we have everything we need, hence giving away things doesn't harm or diminish us. So, the bottom line of today's message is that we will likely intervene in 2024 or 2025, if there's no gray hat move or solar flash. And when I say 2024 or 2025, I genuinely mean that this entire window is a possibility. Our intervention could happen in late 2025, but it could also happen in January 2024. It really depends on the free will choices that humanity makes. We do understand that you much prefer the intervention to be sooner rather than later. As for what you light workers can personally do, Doing your inner work and being kind to the people around you isn't going to magically liberate Earth, but it will reduce people's suffering a bit. The more personal work you do now, the smoother your transition will also be when things do finally change for the better. Finally, I would like to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for you being on Earth. I know it seems like a thankless task. Society has more or less enslaved you. Your loved ones may very well think you're insane, or your loved ones may be dead. You may be lonely, either literally or in the sense that people around you just don't understand you. You're probably working very hard, yet others aren't doing their work. You work very hard, yet no one seems to appreciate you or lend you a hand or care for you. Your so-called leaders oppress you. The people who are supposed to help you, namely the Grey Hats and the Galactics, are basically living in luxury while telling you to keep suffering for the supposed greater good. I get that this situation is enormously unfair to you. It is. I can't deny that. Other people are basically making choices that are causing you to suffer, possibly horribly, while you're one of the rare few Earth humans who just wants what's best for everyone. Because of that, I want to thank you so very, very much. Because when this is all said and done, and you are living in a nourishing 5D civilization and hanging out with us Galactics, it will have been you who kept Earth stable long enough during this critical time for this liberation process to succeed. We literally couldn't do this without you. You as a group are instrumental, you are the key who will ultimately lead to humanity's liberation. You are deeply respected, you are loved, and you will have a place of honor among us. You are the best of us. Very few souls in the universe could be light beacons in the darkness, as you have been for so many years. My hat is off to you. You are doing amazing. And it is my wish that somewhere between 2 months or about 2 years from now, we will be able to meet you physically. With love and respect. Your star brother, Hakann.